Welcome back. It is Dynasty Decisions, the show where we take your questions, your Dynasty teams, and break down all of the decisions that you guys have to make, whether it be rookie picks. And, now that the season is over, we're talking about draft, strategy and that kind of thing. A lot of you guys are still in the fantasy playoffs. So a lot of diverse topics that we're going to talk about on today's show. We got 8 teams to go through. This is Dynasty Decisions, episode 96. Danny, how you doing?
Doing well, doing well. And yeah, as you guys know, we love making these videos. We love giving you guys this feedback. And that's why we're almost on episode 100 for a reason. You guys seem to really enjoy it. And we love, rolling up the sleeves, getting you guys those Dynasty championships. But with that being said, let's waste no more time. Let's get into the first team.
All right, so let's get things kicked off with a couple mother flocker submissions that we have here. And of course, if you guys want to skip the line for these videos, you want your team broken down as quickly as possible, our Flock Fantasy site subscribers using only our promo code FSE will skip the line on these videos. And now that the season is coming to a close, once we get into January, February, and that kind of thing, we will be doing a lot more of these videos. So definitely want to check out the site. We also have our, top rookie rankings, quarterbacks already live, top 5 pass catchers. We're actually recording right after we're done this. So you're going to want to keep that in mind because we are not going to be releasing those on YouTube. But Bryce is the first team that we're going to break down here. A 10-team PPR, 4-point per passing touchdown, 1 quarterback league. You guys can see the team there. Lamar Jackson, Deshaun Watson, Anthony Richardson, Matthew Stafford. Unfortunate that this is not a super flex league, but he does have a very solid core there. James Cook, Josh Jacobs, Javonte Williams, Jalen Warren, and company at running back. So pretty solid there as well. Amon-Ra, Chris Godwin, Zay Flowers, Rashee Rice, Brandon Ayuk, Nico Collins, Garrett Wilson, Elijah Moore, again, like 6 deep at wide receiver, and then TJ Hawkinson as his primary tight end. Looks like he has an early first. I would assume it's not his, and then a mid first, which probably is his. And then he has all of his future picks minus his 2024 third rounder. So he's currently sitting in 5th place is what he has listed here. I'm assuming this was submitted about a week ago. He said he has the number 9 guys first. He can't get to Chase or Jefferson or Olave or anything like that on an ownerless team at this point because, that team, that's wild that a guy that has Chase, Jefferson, Olave, and Ridley
Left
would leave the league and orphan a team.
In a 1 quarterback league?
Yeah, literally. This is his first dynasty league is what he has listed here. His main question is like, what direction should I head into? Should I try and consolidate my receivers? Should I stand pat and see how the season plays out? I feel like his team is primed to make a long run for the title over the next few years. He said he's a trading degenerate along with one other, but everybody else is very hesitant to trade. So, I mean, the first thing I see when I look at this team is you're in 5th place. Again, we don't know how your playoff matchup went out because this was submitted about a week ago, but I would imagine you probably had a decent week. I mean, James Cook had a monster game, so he probably was great. You probably didn't have Josh Jacobs, but, Javonte Williams was probably a fill in there. St. Brown had a good game. Godwin had a good game. Like, you were probably in a decent spot to win your matchup. So I'm just going to assume for ease sake that you're probably into the next round.
Yeah, no, I'd agree. I mean, your roster, like based on how they did this week, like Corey said, had a very strong week. So we're just assuming again you're in the semifinal right now. How do you position potentially to get the championship? And for E's sake, because you didn't mention if there's a trade deadline or not, I'm just going to go about it assuming that there is no trade deadline. So if we spot a move or two, we'll point it out. But let's just read off some of the trades he's made so far this season as well, because he did highlight a couple. First one here, September 6th, 2023, was able to send Antonio Gibson, Jahan Dotson for a 2024 first and Zay Flowers. We both agree, especially in a 1 quarterback league. Give me the Zay Flowers 2024 first side. You upgrade a wide receiver and you liquidate a, spare part running back for a first.
Yeah, I mean, on September 6th, you had a known producer, like young wide receiver in the NFL that had produced his rookie season for a lottery ticket in Zay Flowers. But I think we can both agree that Zay Flowers is worth more now. And then a 2024 first that, by the looks of it, became the 103 because he said the guy's in 9th place right now, or the 104 exactly. But yeah, he said the number 9 guys first and Zay Flowers for like
it's a 10-man league.
Would have been even if this was Jahan Dotson and Antonio Gibson for Zay Flowers. This would have been an even trade probably on September 6th. But you get a 2024 first, like you're making that move every single time, regardless if that guy was a contender or a rebuilder.
It's 102. It's a 10-man league. It's 102.
Oh, right. Yeah, you're right. It is a 10-man league. So 102 is pretty insane to be getting for Zay Flowers. I mean, you're basically locked into Malik Neighbors now with that 102 pick. Maybe, I mean, you have TJ Hawkinson already, so you probably don't want to go after Brock Bowers with that pick. But yeah, in a 10-man league, man, this is a hell of a trade. Next trade, he sends off Jalen Hyatt for Kenneth Gainwell. It looks like this was right after that
Yeah,
first game when Kenneth Gainwell had that like high snap share in week 1.
I
And
remember
you
that.
probably sold low on Jalen Hyatt and probably bought high on Kenneth
Um,
Gainwell. But I mean, you're not
it's
missing out on too much here.
Yeah, it's like what realistically is the difference in asset, to be honest? Because I mean, both of them, Hyatt and Gainwell, until Hyatt shows otherwise, like I view him kind of as fodder at this point. Same thing that I view with Kenneth Gainwell. So realistically, you probably swapped a guy that maybe at max gets you a mid third on the market for a guy that probably gets you a 3-4 turn type of pick.
Yeah, yeah. I think Hyatt's worth slightly more than that, but
Maybe an early
not
three
a
and a
whole
one
lot.
quarterback.
I
And a
mean,
one
like,
quarterback.
the way I look at Hyatt is that he's like a slightly better Alec Pierce, like from last year. Like that's kind of like and Alec Pierce is useless now, obviously,
Yeah.
but going into the season, maybe he was a little bit more valuable kind of thing. Anyways, the other trade that he makes here sells probably low on Puka Nacua on September 19th. I apologize for that. That was probably at the discretion of my advice. Chris Godwin, Jalen Warren, and Anthony Richardson is what you got,
To
though.
be
So, I
fair.
mean, it's a one quarterback league. Anthony Richardson's
Yeah.
not worth as much in a 10-man one quarterback league, but he is still kind of a difference maker at quarterback in a dynasty league. And then Chris Godwin and Jalen Warren, two pieces that have been solid guys that have at least held their value. Warren probably accumulated some value throughout the season. So again, you sold low on Puka Nacua. He's probably like a back end first round startup pick or early second round startup pick in a one quarterback league. So that hurts, but you did get some decent pieces here.
Yeah, and I mean, like you needed Puka Nacua to reach his ceiling in order for that to happen. So from a process standpoint, it's like let's just say that was any other like day 3 player that's let's just say that was Damian Pierce. Like you would have
Yeah.
loved
Oh,
to hear that
obviously.
now.
Like, I think process wise, you're saying like this probably is a good move to make, generally
Yeah,
speaking. But given how productive Puka Nacua was, this wasn't a guy
for
that
sure.
scored 3 touchdowns in his first 3 games and like kind of was a fugazi. And again, that's
Yeah,
partially my fault. I should have been a little bit more in on Puka right from the beginning. You have 20 targets in like your second NFL game. You're probably a pretty good player. So,
probably.
definitely not ideal there. He also had a couple other trades listed here on October 12th. He sent away Zach Moss in a third, received James Cook. That
Love
has
that.
definitely aged very, very well for
I
you,
mean,
especially this
we saw
week.
it live.
If you started James Cook, we saw it live, the game that he had. And then he said he traded Gainwell before Swift popped, which definitely sucks. Yeah. So that's the trade that we talked about already. But either way, I mean, when we look at this team, you're in a position where you're going to be competitive this year, I would assume, if you
Yep.
didn't get bounced in the first round. And you're going to be competitive next year because everybody on your team is young. They're all going to be relevant next year. I would say even more so, your team is probably aligned to win next year more so than this year. So, yeah, if you can make consolidation moves, it's a 10-man, one quarterback, start 9 league. It's a pretty shallow format. So if you can make consolidation moves and, let's say Chris Godwin has another great game this week, but you get bounced out of the playoffs and your
Love
team
that.
doesn't have a trade deadline, maybe take, Zay Flowers and Chris Godwin and see if you can get up to, somebody in that. I guess the Chris Olave team is currently not rostered, but maybe you can go after a Jalen Waddle type or something like that. I think we can move on to the next team here, which is from Daniel K, a classic Dynasty Decision submitter here. We got his team here. Does this say it's a 30-team league? No, sorry,
shot.
it's a 10-team league.
I was like, what?
I swear to God, it looked like it said 30-team league. Anyways, it's a super flex league,
30-man
4-point
league.
passing touchdown. Justin Herbert, Bryce Young, Josh Dobbs, and company there. Breece Hall is his main running back, but nobody else. Jefferson, Puka Nacua, Jamison Williams, Elijah Moore, Gabe Davis, Treylon Burks, and company there. So little weak at wide receiver depth-wise, but you do have some young upside pieces that could potentially turn into something. And then with Kyle Pitts, David Njoku, and Tucker Kraft, that's a very solid core. The war chest, though, you got an early first, your own first, which is probably relatively early. You got 2 mid-first, a late first, 2 seconds in 2025 and a third, 2 extra thirds in 2025. So, I mean, this is a really, really good shell of a future great team. Let's just put it that way. You got some star power at quarterback, at running back, at wide receiver, at tight end, etc. But you're really going to fill out the depth of this roster in the draft.
Yeah, no, I completely agree. I mean, the fact that you have these many picks with still some needle moving fucking assets, like we're talking Justin Herbert, we're talking Breece Hall, we're talking Justin Jefferson, Puka Nacua, like we're in a really, really good spot. Like Corey said, have a really nice shell here. He also says biggest question is what to do with the draft picks. It says here that he has the 102, the 104, and the 203 already locked in. And only 4 teams are in the playoffs, and he has 3 of those teams first. So hopefully for his sake, the guy that he doesn't have the first round pick ends up winning the championship.
Yeah, and it is a 10-man league. So even though it's their playoff
Yeah.
teams, it's going to be, what, 108, 109, 110 probably
Yeah.
area that you're talking about. It's not like the 111 and 112 are a factor here. So, I mean, looking at this team, you could definitely use another quarterback. So that 102, I
Yep.
would probably earmark for Drake May, most likely. 104, just add Malik Neighbors to this team. I wouldn't be at all opposed either if you wanted to see and get ahead of the curve and see, let's say you finish with the 108, the 110, and the 107 or something like that, and see if the 107 plus the 110 gets you up to 103, and then you could secure Drake, Marvin, and Neighbors for this team.
Yeah.
You know what I mean? That would
Might
be
have
the
to add
type of move
more.
I would maybe look to get ahead of the curve on. If people don't know, exactly how the tier breaks work yet at the top of the draft order, the time to strike on that might be like immediately after the season is done.
Yeah, and I mean, given the depth that you have, keep in mind too, in the starting 11 league, 10-man league, let's just say that's a regular 12-man start 10. You're still dealing with like a relatively shallow league for the most part. And because of that, like, can you go up? And realistically, I'd be willing to pay the farm, to be honest. Like, if that ends up being, let's just say the 108, 109, 110, or 107, 108, 109, I'd be willing to do like 107, 108. At least one of the seconds, even if like I honestly wouldn't hate doing all three of those ones, getting like the 103 and a second round pick, to be honest. Because I do think, given the status of your team, given the assets you've already built up, getting just a needle moving wide receiver like Marvin Harrison and also getting Malik Neighbors, you're going to be in a position in a 4 wide receiver, 5 start type of league where you're going to have arguably 4 of the top 11 overall startup wide receivers with Puka in there.
Yeah, I will say the one thing that discourages me away from doing that type of trade a little bit is the fact that it is a start 11 where you have to start 3 running backs, 4 wide
Yeah.
receivers every single week. So,
3
you
running
know,
backs fair.
again, it's a 10-man league, so typically, everybody's going to have good teams and all that kind of stuff. But I will
Yeah.
say you have a pretty large starting lineup. This isn't your
Yeah.
prototypical 10-man league that's like a start 8 or whatever. Like, you do have to start a lot of players. So it might behoove
Yeah.
you to just, take 102 Drake May, take 104 Malik Neighbors, spend that 107, 108, and 110, let's say hypothetically, on one
There's just
running
no
back in
running
there,
backs.
maybe whoever RB1 in the classes, and
Well,
then you grab an Odunze or a Worthy or a Nagbuka or something like that.
that's kind of the thing. At that point, I would rather just defer the picks and hope that the 2025 class is better. I mean, maybe I'm wrong. Maybe a running back does go higher. Maybe there's
I
somebody that
personally
gets
think that
buzz,
the
but
late first round picks are going to end up being the running back, pocket. Like, whoever, like, let's say Henderson and Allen and all the, like, Allen's already declared for the draft actually, but let's say Henderson comes out for the draft. Trey Benson, I believe, is going to
that's the
test well.
difference
He's
maker. Yeah.
like an option. I believe the dynasty community is too stubborn to allow no running backs to go in the first round. And even if none of them actually belong to go in the first round because they're all like top 75 NFL draft picks, I still believe that 3 or 4 might find their way, maybe 2 or 3 find their way towards the end of the first round in that 107 to 112 area, because I don't think people are going to feel good, especially in more casual leagues, stomaching taking wide receiver 5 or wide receiver 6 or wide receiver 7 in this draft class over the RB1 or 2.
Well, that's kind of why I would rather defer the picks, because I would rather say, hey,
I
listen,
agree with you, but I'm just saying,
yeah,
like, the market value of like a Travion Henderson and a Braylon Allen or a Trey Benson might be like the 107 to 110 in this draft.
yeah,
Like, I
no,
wouldn't be shocked if by the time this offseason is over, that's kind of the point we're at.
and that's fair. I just don't want to be the one left holding the bag on that pick.
No,
Personally,
I agree with you. So let's look over some of these trades real quick, just so we're not spending too much time on this team. On October 13th, he sends away A.J. Brown, a late first, and Cole Kmet received Justin Jefferson. I think you're buying high or you're buying low on Justin Jefferson when he was injured by the looks of it. So that was a great move for you. Don't even need to talk about that one, really. Tyler Boyd in a mid-third for a late second. Again, great move there. That was probably about the time T. Higgins was injured. Bijan Robinson and a late first. You got an early first, which is the 102 right now. So you basically trade Bijan for Drake May straight up. And you got Puka, Gabe Davis, an early second and a third. Yeah, I don't know how you were able to trade for Puka this low on November 15th. This was like well into the point where we knew Puka was for real. So that is an absolutely excellent move. You really turned your team around with some of these trades. Trey McBride in a late second for a mid to late first. I would say that's kind of aged semi-poorly, just given how good Trey McBride has been. But
it's aged
I mean,
poorly.
process-wise,
Yeah.
you got a mid-first out of a guy that was kind of starting to spike.
And I mean, we can take credit too. Like, we were the ones saying Trey McBride right now is overvalued because we've seen a couple games, but we haven't seen him do it as sustainably as guys like Sam Laporta, as guys like, the top of the tight end market, TJ Hawkinson, guys like that. Yeah, I'm gonna have to eat crow on him, man. He looks real. He looks efficient. And I think if somebody wanted to argue he's a top 2 tight end in Dynasty, I wouldn't make the argument against it. He's shown enough to me to be able to be vaulted up to that tier 1 of tight end. So I'll take the L on that, because I was really saying like, hey, Terry McBride, he's showing signs, but people are so infatuated and already expecting him to be at that level. He's shown why he should be at that level.
Yeah, and it was also very possible that he kind of faded into like Noah Fant obscurity. Like it was possible that happened.
It was a risk management play,
obviously. Yeah, it was a risk management play, and this one is just absurd. I mean, selling Deshaun Watson for 2 1s and Josh Dobbs
in this economy.
Move. Yeah, in this economy, exactly. Like in a 10-man league, I think that's a pretty great move. I would have maybe tried to then shift Dobbs to somebody too, because Dobbs was pretty valuable there for a second, and you maybe could have gotten at least like a second out of him, if not 2 seconds or something like that. So I might have tried to do that, but regardless, I think he profited out of all of these deals realistically. So this is, savvy trading, smart trading. And I think I can trust your ability to be able to build this team out properly, just given what you've done so far. So we can move on probably to the next team here, which is from Ahmed. 12-team PPR, 4-point per passing touchdown, super flex as well. Justin Herbert, CJ Stroud and company at quarterback. Jahmyr Gibbs, Kendre Miller, Zach Charbonnet, and a couple other guys there at running back, but not a whole lot going on behind Gibbs. J-Mo, Jackson Smith and Jigba, Traylon Burks, Jordan Addison, Christian Watson, and others at wide receiver. Looks like he's built completely his wide receiver core through the last 2 draft classes. Kyle Pitts, Michael Mayer, Sam Laporta, absolutely loaded at tight end there. You got like 3 of the top 7 tight ends in Dynasty. And then in 2024, you have 3 first-round picks, including 1 that is projected to be early. And then you have your own second by the looks of it, and then a bunch of extra, mid-round picks, including an extra 2025 first as well. So he does say he has the 101 in this league, but he does not have any quarterbacks. So I'm wondering, but I don't need any quarterbacks is what he's saying here, because he has Herbert and Stroud. So he's wondering if he should just pick Marvin or try and trade back. I mean, I think you know our answer to this, Ahmed, but he said, I think the 103 needs a quarterback, so he's all ears, but the issue is that the 102 probably doesn't need a quarterback, so he might pick Marvin. Any thoughts on what I should do? The other picks are probably going to be 110 and 109. Next year's 2025 picks are also late, but one might be in the middle. So how do you handle this situation? I'm sure we're going to get this question a lot about Marvin Harrison, to be honest.
Yeah, obviously this is a tricky situation, because you're basically assuming that the 102 is going to value quarterbacks the same way that we do, the same way that you do. So they wouldn't just automatically, pick the player over the quarterback. And because the 103 does need it, my advice here is reach out to him as soon as possible, discuss the possibility, say, hey, listen, like you could take the risk that a quarterback falls, or you're possibly left in a situation where you're going to have to reach on quarterback 3 or not end up getting the quarterback that you want. So maybe in this case, because obviously, I mean, as much as I prefer Caleb Williams to Marvin Harrison Jr., it's not like you're going to be saying, hey, give me 2+1s on top of Marvin Harrison. Like, I feel like you should reach a reasonable deal for both sides here. So I'm not really concerned in terms of compensation. Definitely would want to trade down, because obviously you're not just going to take need over fit. Like, worst case scenario, if this guy is unwilling to trade up to 101, take Caleb Williams. Guess what? Take Caleb Williams, and at that point, if you really want to, you can move Justin Herbert, you can move CJ Stroud, you can move Caleb Williams himself. You have more flexibility, more liquidity to be able to play on the market. So that's how I'd play it. Not to mention, I mean, you could also see what 104 is saying right now. See if 104 absolutely needs a quarterback, would be willing to pay even more of a premium, because obviously, as we know, Marvin Harrison Jr. is like the golden standard of wide receiver in this dynasty class. But for us personally, like, we really like Malik Neighbors too. And maybe the difference between Malik Neighbors and Marvin Harrison in your league is over a first-round pick of value. So if that guy at 104 says, hey, listen, I'm going to give you my 104, my 2025 first, and my 2026 first to go up and get Caleb Williams, at that point, I wouldn't even be opposed to that deal either.
Yeah, I think the other interesting avenue that you could go down is just seeing if you can get Jamar Chase or Justin Jefferson straight up for the 101 as well, because I think both of those guys are equivalent in value to Caleb Williams, at least the way
get CD plus too.
Yeah, maybe you can get CD Lamb plus or whatever. I will say, like, the thought process here is you never take need, especially when you're not ready to compete. Because even if you took Marvin Harrison Jr., you're probably betting on a lot of young guys to take steps forward. Yeah. So you're probably not ready to compete. It's probably a house money season for you next year. So for me, I'm taking the best available asset, which is Caleb Williams, if I can't trade down. And there's a good chance if your league mate is smart enough that he's at 103, you're trying to trade down from 101. He knows you're not going to take Caleb Williams, and he knows you want Marvin Harrison Jr. And if it was me at 103, I would make you say, like, hey, let's just swap them, like, barely any value added, because I know you want Marvin. I know you don't want to take him at 101. That's the way I would if I was the guy with the 103.
Yeah.
So it's possible that your league mate is smart enough and really understands that and recognizes that. So it's going to be a difficult maneuver unless your league mate is an absolute casual.
Well, oddly enough, what was funny with this is I have a relatable scenario where I believe it was actually in the FSC Listener League Dino. Spicy Hot needed a quarterback bad. He really wanted CJ Stroud. I had the 104. He had the 105. I went to him like, hey, listen here. Do you want to trade up a pick? You want to make sure you get CJ Stroud? And he told me, he's like, well, you're not going to take CJ Stroud. You don't need a quarterback. And I said, okay, watch this. So I took CJ Stroud. He had the 105, and I was going to take whoever fell between JSN and Jahmyr Gibbs anyways. So he takes Gibbs. I ended up getting JSN at the 106. And then after the draft, he's like, no, I tried to call your bluff. Like, let's talk. So I ended up getting his second round pick. I gave him CJ Stroud, ended up getting Jahmyr Gibbs. And you can argue now that I probably lost that deal on face value. But at the time, it's like I have Justin Herbert, I have Josh Allen, I have Deshaun Watson. I viewed CJ Stroud and Jahmyr Gibbs in the same tier in this rookie draft cycle. I made sure that I got that little plus. And I mean, him looking back on it's probably like, I only have to pay an early second round pick to move up to go and get a guy like CJ Stroud, who now is valued as a top 6 pick in Superflex.
Yeah, but like being willing to call the guy's bluff is, I guess, what you have to be willing to do. Because if he realizes that you're trying to trade down for Harrison, you have to be willing to take Caleb at 101 and then be able to function trades. But part of that does depend on your league market. If you're in a league market where nobody trades ever, then that might be more challenging. But the leagues that me and you are in, it's very easy to make trades, and you don't have to move off of the asset that you took necessarily. Too, you can't just be like, oh, I took Caleb Williams, now I'm going to try and sell Caleb Williams. You can also then just move off of, in your case, Justin Herbert or CJ Stroud or somebody like that. And maybe down to your quarterback, pick up a first rounder or something like that. There's a lot of flexibility that you have to these moves. Let's real quick rattle off his trades here. Sends away Devontae Smith, 2 1s, and Jamison Williams. I think Devontae Smith's a great asset. I'm not a huge Jamison Williams guy, but I think I would take 2 1s for Devontae Smith straight up. On September 20th, he sells Justin Fields, Brian Robinson, Jalen Hyatt in a second, gets Justin Herbert and Christian Watson. At the time, on September 20th, we were in peak QB school ripping apart Justin Fields season as well. So the fact that you were like selling low technically on Justin Fields and you still managed to get up to Justin Herbert and Christian Watson, I think was a great move. I mean, Brian Robinson, I guess, was having a good stretch of games, and that's probably why you're able to do that.
Then he got 2 2s for Jaleel McLaughlin. That's awesome. You'd love to see that.
2 2s for Jaleel McLaughlin is absolutely wild. And he says he has a trade on the table right now, which is Jamison Williams, Kyle Pitts, and a 2025 first. Listen, Jamison Williams and Kyle Pitts have a lot of upside, but let's not pretend like a year from now they might be dead assets in Dynasty either. And you get Amon-Ra St. Brown, that is an absolute smash move, in my opinion. I would absolutely make that move.
Especially in your spot because you have assets.
Faith in Kyle Pitts, and a 2025 first is, a decent asset. Jamison Williams is a fine upside swing, but honestly, given your team's construction right now, you don't really have a whole lot of guarantees at wide receiver.
Sam Laporta.
Yeah, exactly. You have Sam Laporta and Michael Mayer also. So yeah, I'm totally fine making that move.
On top of that, let's keep it real. That guy sees that you're willing to go and trade for Amon-Ra St. Brown prior to the draft. Maybe he's more willing to trade up for Caleb Williams, knowing that you're not as pressed to go and grab Marvin Harrison Jr. Maybe it's a little intrinsic value given the leverage situation, because he probably looks at your wide receiver core right now and says, oh, he needs to take Marv. He's got nobody there. If you add Amon-Ra St. Brown to that group and say, hey, listen, I will take Caleb Williams if I have to. Look at the trade I just made. He's going to have a little bit more fear, a little bit more FOMO of missing out on Caleb Williams in that aspect.
Yeah, and I think this is a really sharp move of moving off of a volatile asset like Kyle Pitts, because a lot of people are going to be in this situation. I think I'm in this situation in one league where I had Kyle Pitts already. I assumed I was set at tight end, and I drafted Sam Laporta as a good value in the draft, and now Sam Laporta is the better tight end. Dude. So a lot of people are going to be in the situation where they just drafted Dalton Kincaid or Sam Laporta or whoever else because they assumed they were good at tight end. They were just taking the best player available. And now they're like, oh, now I need to move off of Kyle Pitts because he's no longer the asset that I thought he was. In that situation, I would say wait till his value goes up. Maybe the Falcons sign a quarterback, trade for a quarterback, whatever.
Or maybe he just gets healthier, man. I'm convinced this year that knee injury was definitely affecting him because he didn't look like the same athlete.
Yeah, he's going to be like the post-type sleeper of all post-type sleepers next year. I'm going to be really interested to see where his ADP, both Dynasty and Redraft and Best Ball, settles in next year, because he's going to be a really interesting case study for sure.
If he's like an 8th round pick in Best Ball, I will have 100% rostership of him.
I'm pretty sure that's probably about where he's going to be, because he went from like a 4th round pick his second year, or for his rookie year, then like a 6th round pick this year, and now probably an 8th round pick. Kind of makes the most sense, I would say, progression wise. And it might even be worse than that if the Falcons don't get a great quarterback. Yeah, that's unfortunate for sure. So let's try and speed these up. We're kind of going on tangents here. Number 4 we have is Brian Jones. Next submission we got. You guys can see his team there, 12-team half PPR super flex league. Pat Mahomes, Dak Prescott, Anthony Richardson, you are set at quarterback for the next while. David Montgomery, Tank Bigsby, just a lot of young guys, a lot of upside piece running backs. And then he has Jamar Chase, Jalen Waddle, Chris Olave, T. Higgins, Drake London, Josh Downs, and sneakily Dontavian Wicks, who's kind of a nice little, UDFA pickup or fourth round, rookie pick that you guys spent. Dalton Kincaid is his main tight end there with Cade Otton and probably as his backup. 2 mid-first this year, no second, but he does have an extra first, like I said. So pretty solid team, pretty well-built team overall. Little light at running back. David Montgomery is really your only dude at this point in time. His plan, and it looks like I've structured a lot of teams this way too, Brian. So don't get it twisted. I'm in a lot of positions like this. His plan was, house money year, light at running back, a low cost Tank Bigsby, Chase Brown types. And then next year, I just draft Raheem Sanders and Travion Henderson, Braylon Allen. It's a great running back class, right? Wrong, because this running back class has not been nearly as good as we thought it was going to be. So he said one of his picks might be 103, which means that, if Drake May or Marvin Harrison falls to him, he said, should I look to move off of one of my other quarterbacks? I mean, the easy answer is you just take Drake May or Marvin Harrison and figure the rest out later. And then he said the second first is most likely going to be the 106. I would say 106 would be the absolute ceiling for, let's say Travion Henderson declares for the draft, gets healthy, tests well at the combine. I could see him, if he was an early second round NFL draft pick, being as high as the 106. That's probably the absolute ceiling for him, though. So in your situation, you're probably just taking best player available in both cases.
If a third quarterback goes round 1, I cannot stomach.
Yeah, no, probably not. But let's assume it's just Drake May and Caleb Williams.
Sure.
3 or 4 wide receivers go in the first round, maybe 5 wide receivers go in the first round, but Henderson gets a good landing spot. He's second round NFL draft pick. I could see people steaming him to 106.
Yeah, I personally, again, we'll talk about some wide receiver prospect stuff. If you guys are over on Flock Fantasy, you guys will be seeing that soon. But I personally, I can't take a top 15 selected, or I can't pass on a top 15 selected like a Dunze over 51st overall pick Travion Henderson.
Yeah, no, I agree with you. But again, he recognizes this, Brian. Here he's like, I'm probably going to take Drake May or Marvin Harrison. I'm probably going to take Brock Bowers or something at 106, or maybe Neighbors falls to him, or maybe it's wide receiver 3, whoever it ends up being. Maybe it's another quarterback. Maybe you're taking Jaden Daniels and Drake May with the 106. But here's the thing about Dynasty. You're building a portfolio of assets, and you move on from your players based on what you don't need. You trade for need. You don't draft for need in the rookie draft. So if value dictates that you take 103 Drake May and 106 Jaden Daniels, and after the draft, sell Pat Mahomes for a Godfather offer. You got to sell Dak Prescott for a good offer. You got to sell Anthony Richardson, who's probably the guy that I would actually sell because he's the most volatile of your quarterback core. Then you just do that. And you can sell Anthony Richardson on the open market, probably for Jonathan Taylor, a first and another competitive piece. And then you're like, okay, now I've actually refashioned my running back core. I got myself a stud. I got more draft capital, and maybe I got another wide receiver, another running back to help myself compete.
I mean, at that point, you might be able to get Gibbs or Bijan plus a little bit on Anthony Richardson. If that guy needs a quarterback and he says, hey, listen, I love Bijan, I love Gibbs, but I need a quarterback in a super flex league, you're going to be able to leverage for basically any other running back you want. So although it seems on surface level I need running backs, I have so many quarterbacks, why would I take a quarterback? Because if you're looking at it from a trade asset opportunity standpoint, any running back can be attainable for the quarterback core that you have.
Yeah, exactly. So the bottom line is you just got to take the best player available, regardless of what that is. And I'm pretty sure I'm going to say this 60 million times this offseason, but this offseason is the offseason to trade for running back production, because the draft class is not very good, and you're probably going to be spending a lot of second-round picks on running back prospects, which is fine. That's going to be where the area of the draft is of your Blake Corums, your Braylon Allens, all that kind of stuff. But at the same time, if I'm a competitive team or a house money team trying to turn it over to a competitive team, I'm just going to go buy Bijan Robinson. I'm just going to go buy Jahmyr Gibbs. I'm just going to go buy Breece Hall, Jonathan Taylor, or Travis Etienne. I'm not going to waste my time with rookie running backs who are kind of questionable prospect profiles at 106, 107, when I could spend that pick and get Jonathan Taylor. Probably plus.
This feels like the type of draft class where if somebody's really eyeing their own player from a micro standpoint, you're going to be able to either buy contending assets, like you said, or B, be able to defer those late first round picks into 2025 picks. Because as we know, the intrinsic value of that is, even if you're a competitive team and you have, let's just say, the 108 and the 110, if you're potting that off to a 2025 1 and 2 for each of those picks, well, now you have more buying power in season. Whereas those 2024 picks, they basically have to be actualized at the draft. Those 2025 picks still have another year that you can play with on the market. So if it comes the opportunity where mid-season Christian McCaffrey hasn't fallen off and he's still the stud that we're used to seeing, and maybe you're a house money team leaning on competitive, well, at that point, you can just say, hey, listen, this 2025 1 and 2 I just got for trading the 107 last year ends up getting me Christian McCaffrey and ends up helping me win my league.
Yeah, absolutely. We can rapid fire his trades here. Looks like he sold AJ Brown, Jerome Ford, and Kendre Miller for Drake London in the 103 by the looks of it. So that is an absolutely smash move. I mean, like, London's a great asset in his own right. And he is a lot closer to AJ Brown, and at least in my opinion, than a lot of people would admit, just given the age and the way that your team is constructed. So getting the 103 on top of that, like, I mean, the 103 is probably the most valuable asset in this deal. So that's definitely a great move. And then you buy low on Jamar Chase and T. Higgins, you know, premier, like, Joe Burrow's struggling season. Jordan Addison and Amon-Ra St. Brown I love, but I mean, Jamar Chase is a much better asset than both of them, and T. Higgins and Addison are probably comparable. So definitely a solid move.
Yeah, absolute smash. And then the final deal, you're able to get David Montgomery for Michael Wilson, Ezekiel Elliott in a mid to early second. I
think it's probably a fair trade, give or take, because Zeke is producing right now for a competitive team, and you probably sold him low by the looks of it, because 11-20, I don't think he was the workhorse for the Patriots at that point in time. It was probably before Ramondre's injury. So if this was just a mid to early second and Michael Wilson for David Montgomery, it's probably even. But knowing the production value that Zeke is giving you now, kind of unfortunate that you didn't hold him a little bit longer and then sell, but you might have had a trade deadline. I'm not exactly sure. Either way, I think the other two deals kind of make up for that.
Yeah, no, that's definitely fair. He said he traded for Montgomery to try to sneak the 6 seed. At that point, honestly, I just wouldn't have made the deal with that type of motivation, knowing that you're maybe sneaking into the dance without like a true top end perspective.
Sneaking into the dance is never like a good idea, honestly. Like, unless you actually have a reasonable chance of winning and you're sneaking into the dance because your team is peaking late, that's fine. But like, your team is good, don't get me wrong, but it probably isn't a top 3 competitive asset roster in your league right now, just given your weakness at running back. If you had better running backs that emerged, say, you know, Joe Mixon went down and Chase Brown became a workhorse or something like that, then at that point, I kind of understand trying to like sneak into the 6 seed and be a dangerous playoff, you know, berserker or whatever. But I don't think you were probably competitive enough to be able to win.
Well, not to mention like that alone, like trading for Montgomery, that might have gotten you up from you ended up at the 106. Maybe not making that move could have gotten you the 104, the 105. And then you're looking at an asset like Neighbors or Bowers at those spots, rather than praying Bowers falls and probably having to take quarterback 3. So that's my thought on it. Again, if Jayden Daniel ends up going top 15, he's going to be a top 36 asset anyway. So it's not like you lost out on value dropping from 105 to 106. But at the same time, that doesn't happen. And maybe the 106, like, you're going to have to take like a Nadunze. You're going to have to take like, I don't know, an early second round Jayden Daniels. You're going to have to take like RB1 off the board that goes 49th overall. At that point, then you're going to be wishing, oh, fuck, I wish I kind of had the 104 or 105 here.
Yeah, for sure. I definitely agree with that. So let's move on to the next team here. We got from Aaron Johnson, a 12-man PPR, 6-point per passing touchdown, 1 quarterback league. So Kyler Murray, Daniel Jones, pretty much all you need there in a 1 quarterback league. Jahmyr Gibbs is his main running back, with guys like Jalen Warren, Kendre Miller, Chase Brown, you know, Tank Bigsby and others as backup running backs. Strong wide receiver core, though, with, you know, Jalen Waddle, JSN, Michael Pittman Jr., Jordan Addison, Hollywood Brown, Drake London, Josh Downs, Jameson Williams, Treylon Burks, like a very solid, well-built wide receiver core. Dalton Schultz, Trey McBride, and Pat Freiermuth. You got, you know, 2 top 8 dynasty tight ends, and McBride, like you said earlier, is probably a top 3 to 5 dynasty tight end himself, maybe even higher than that. And then 2024 picks, you got 3 firsts. They're kind of organized haphazardly here, but he's got 3 firsts, 3 seconds, and 2 threes, including, by the looks of it, a first that projects to be early if it's his own. So he does list where the picks are. He has the 103, the 105, and the 106. He said he narrowly missed the playoffs this year, which is kind of surprising considering Daniel Jones, Kyler Murray, not the greatest quarterback core. One guy just tore his ACL. One guy was coming off of an ACL tear. So a little bit strange there, but what should you do with the bounty of picks? This is a pretty easy answer to me. I mean, always the answer is best player available. Your wide receiver core is so fucking loaded, dude. If I were you, I would buy Bijan Robinson with this team. This is the type of team that I think is a great buy Bijan team with.
Yeah, no, I agree. I mean, like, let's look through a couple of trades too, but this first deal, Zay Flowers, Kenneth Walker for Drake London. I'm not going to lie. it seems a little steep for me. I think we actually got asked this on the live stream, right?
Yeah,
I
this
believe
is
so.
actually kind of a moderately similar deal to one that I actually made, where I sold off Kenneth Walker and I ended up giving up like a first that at the time I thought was late, but ends up being kind of like, it's probably gonna be like the 106 this year, which kind of sucks. Because I was buying low on Kenneth Walker, quote unquote, right before the season because people thought Charbonnet was going to eat
You got
into
him
the
for the
work.
one straight up?
Huh?
You got him for the one straight up?
I also got a competitive. I got like Cole Kmet and Kenneth Walker for a late first. A
I
late
mean,
first is what I thought it was.
even at the time, I think that was a good process if you were intending on competing. It's
Yeah,
just
I
unfortunate.
was. My team was like a house money team that could compete if things broke right and things were breaking right. So that's why I made the deal. Anyways, the other trade he makes here is a late second Tyler Algier for JMO and a mid second. So I guess Algier's worth. I mean, 9/17/2023. That was right. That Tyler Algier breakout first week of the season. That's probably when he made this trade.
Probably, but I mean, even still, like, what are we doing? Like, that's an easy smash for your side. And then this deal, Tua for the 106, one quarterback league, 106 and a one quarterback league makes it a little bit close here. If we're projecting it forward, Marvin Harrison Jr., Malik Neighbors, Brock Bowers going to be your top three. 104 to 106 is going to be some combo, probably of like a Dunze, a running back mixed in there. Honestly, God, maybe not even a running back in there. Maybe just Caleb and Drake are 105, 106. And if
Yeah,
we're doing
maybe
that right.
potentially.
And I mean, if we're just doing it like that, I would rather have both Caleb and Drake to Tua. So I think that's a good value.
Yeah, yeah, and I mean, in a one quarterback league too, like Tua doesn't have that much value. Like he's
Agreed.
good and he's a solid option, but he's not a needle mover. He's not a difference maker. He's like the difference between Tua and Jared Goff in a one quarterback league is not as big
Nothing.
as it would be in a super flex league, for example. So,
Yeah.
that's definitely a solid move. But yeah, like 103, 105, 106, dude, I would be willing to give 105 and 106 for Bijan Robinson. I guarantee you might even be able to get Bijan plus for that in this type of league format. So at 103, grab whatever guy falls, Neighbors, Bowers, Harrison, whatever. And then at 105, 106, I would try and sell those players or those picks for Bijan Robinson or for a difference making running back, or maybe you just want to sell one of them off. Maybe 106 gets you Jonathan Taylor, for example, or something like that. I would be okay doing that because this team is ready to compete next year. You have a fucking absolutely loaded receiver core. You have great tight ends. You have a good Kyler's going to be a lockdown quarterback for you, and you have other picks too. You have a bunch of second rounders. You could take Jaden Daniels in the second round or something to go along with Kyler Murray to back up your Daniel Jones share that's going to be probably dead at the beginning of the year next year. So yeah, this is a really well-built team. Jameer Gibbs is your hammer. You have a couple guys behind him, but if you put one more hammer with Jameer Gibbs, you're ready to compete.
But either way, let's transition into the next team. And the first free submission of the video coming from Jake. He says it's the first year of a startup auction, currently in second place with the second most points for. Feel like my wide receivers present a ton of upside, but don't have a bona fide stud right now. Not sure what your thoughts are on trying to beef up that position and how I can do so. Maybe using a guy like Jordan Love potentially. Probably don't want to make any huge moves as I think I could be competitive for a while with this build, but let me know your guys' overall thoughts. So looking at the team right now, clearly stocked with a lot of talent. The pick cupboard isn't necessarily there, but at the same time, when you got studs at every single position, you're in a good spot. So he says here at quarterback, he has Josh Allen, Kyler Murray, Jordan Love as his main three. Running backs are Bijan, Bryce, Najee Harris, Aaron Jones, Khalil Herbert, etc. There. Wide receivers, Devontae Smith, Drake London, Puka, Marquise Brown, Deontay Johnson, DeAndre Hopkins. Tight ends, you have George Kittle, David Njoku headlining the bunch here. So, I mean, it's clear as day this is a competitive team. What are your main thoughts on it as a whole?
Yeah, I mean, I like his thought process going to Jordan Love as his third quarterback. Maybe see like the guy that sticks out to me as somebody that's a buy low in Dynasty that would be a good third quarterback for this team is Bryce Young. See what you can get on top of Bryce Young for Jordan Love would be my thought process, where you take Jordan Love, let's say, and Devontae Smith, and you go to the Bryce Young manager who maybe has a better wide receiver than Devontae Smith, and see if you can make a 2-for-2 like that. So it's like Jordan Love and Devontae Smith for CeeDee Lamb and Bryce Young or something like, you know what I mean? Like something like that, or AJ Brown, maybe Garrett Wilson, whoever he has.
If you can get up to that high, absolutely.
People love Jordan Love, man. People really do like Jordan Love, and nobody likes Bryce Young right now. So I think the way that person's going to think about that deal is they're getting a big upgrade at quarterback. And if Bryce Young's their QB2 or something like that, they're going to really feel good about going after Jordan Love. And you, as a guy that has Josh Allen and Kyler Murray, can afford to be patient with Bryce Young.
Yeah, I mean, I would be shocked if someone accepted that unless maybe you added like another piece. Like, I wouldn't be opposed to adding like Marquise Brown to that if it upgrades to a consolidation at wide receiver. I don't know, but definitely play with it. Like Corey said, people have a very high thought of Jordan Love right now. Obviously, he has like the same amount of touchdown passes. I think right now is like Tua Tagovailoa. Like he looks good. Obviously, as your quarterback 3 here, like Corey said, maybe go after a guy who maybe hasn't looked good, like a Bryce Young, or maybe if you can't get up to a Bryce Young because that guy's not competing and doesn't want to give up his young quarterback that he probably took top 2 last year.
Go for a vet. Go for Ryan
Even
Tannehill.
Matt
Go
Stafford.
for Jimmy Garoppolo. Go for Derek Carr. Like somebody, Matt Stafford. Somebody that's cheap, because from going from Jordan Love to Matt Stafford, if that's somebody's quarterback too, you could probably squeeze a pretty strong wide receiver out of them. And maybe it's Jordan Love and Marquise Brown for Matt Stafford and Jalen Waddle or something like that. You know what I mean? You could probably get up to a pretty solid wide receiver to go along with the guys that you already have. But yeah, I mean, generally speaking, you don't really need to do anything with this team. You have a pretty strong competitive team. Yeah, you don't have any like hammer at wide receiver, but your quarterbacks are hammers. Your running backs are hammers, at least the top 2 guys. And you have a hammer tight end too. So not always are you going to need hammers across the board if everybody's a hammer except for one position group on your team. Like I have plenty of competitive teams where like my running back core isn't the greatest and the rest of my team is great. Or maybe my QB2 isn't the greatest, like my team on Tone Set or Truthers or whatever. Like my QB2 is Brock Purdy, not really a hammer, but the rest of my roster is really strong. My running backs, my wide receivers, my tight end, etc.
Yeah. By the way, shout out for that league. Hopefully we can get an FSC championship so we can make some content on that. But overall, he does have a few trades here. I think we can literally just rip these off like a Band-Aid. Anything less than 2 1s, you're able to go get Kyler Murray. I think that's a smash move. I think that's already shown that his value has appreciated from that point. You probably don't even get him for 2 1s at this point. So love that. Second deal, Zach Wilson. You got a 2nd round pick. I don't have to see even Darius Slayton here. 2nd round pick over Zach Wilson. 24-2nd, Romeo Dubs, Kylan Granson for George Kittle in the 2024. You're competing. It's an advantage at tight end. Excellent move. And then finally here, you said you weren't sure about this, but anytime I can give up like an ambiguous quarterback that went on day 3 for a wide receiver that can legitimately give me top 25 production moving forward, I'm doing that every day of the week. I understand DeAndre Hopkins is old, Aiden O'Connell young, some upside at quarterback, but in your spot, you don't care about his upside at quarterback. You care about winning that damn championship. And DeAndre Hopkins is going to help you do that more than Aiden O'Connell will.
Yeah, and honestly, like Aiden O'Connell's got to turn into Brock Purdy for you to lose this deal.
Yeah.
And I would be very shocked if the Raiders were that confident in Aiden O'Connell to the point that they weren't investing in quarterback in some form or fashion next year. But yeah, like you're in a pretty good spot. Like we said, let's move on to the last team of the video. We'll cut it off at this one just because we went a little bit longer on some of the mother flockers here. Nick's team, you guys can see it's an 8-man league. So very shallow league format, not a super flex either. It's a 1 quarterback start 8-man league. So studs, and studs is what you want in a format like this. He said his team is currently 5-8. Last team in the playoffs. So he's the 6th seed. He said 6 out of 8 teams make the playoffs. So a little odd for an 8-man league that 6 teams make the playoffs, in my opinion. But he said going into the last week, do not believe he can win this year, but wanting to set himself up for next year, which I think a lot of people are going to find themselves in this position where they barely made the playoffs. They want to make sure that they're going to be better set up for next year because maybe they were a fraudulent contender and they just snuck in or something like that. He said the league is considering shifting to Superflex this next season or the one after that. And then he says, what moves would you recommend I look to make in the offseason in, maybe keeping in mind that quarterbacks are going to start to maybe gain some value pretty soon. I mean, looking at his team, Jalen Hurts, Trevor Lawrence, you're already going to be pretty set in a Superflex league with
Jared Goff and
Will Levis in reserve, ETN, Gibbs. I mean, you got 2 top 5 dynasty running backs there with James Cook, who's kind of on the rise right now, Brian Robinson and Najee Harris. Wide receivers, maybe you'd want another hammer here because Garrett Wilson's really your only hammer at wide receiver. Jalen Waddle's a very good option. DJ Moore's a very good option. Christian Watson's a very good option. All these guys are solid. Dalton Kincaid, Kyle Pitts, I'd say you're pretty solid at tight end there as well. And then you have some extra draft capital. You have an extra 1st in 25, an extra 2nd in 2025. This is a team that I would say looking for moves to set you up for next year was his main question. So what sticks out as something like that?
I mean, right off the bat, assuming that you do end up losing in the first round of the playoffs, you're currently in 6th out of the 8 teams. That means that you'd have the 103. I think in the majority of leagues, especially in an 8-man, I can see Brock Bowers being valued by the consensus ahead of Malik Neighbors, which would be your preferred option. I would love to add a guy like Malik Neighbors to this team.
Even his team, I would prefer Neighbors, to be honest.
Yeah, absolutely. With Kincaid and with Pitts. Yeah, no, I agree with you there. You add a guy like Malik Neighbors to this team. And then, I mean, outside of that, there's not really many moves that stick out to me as something that has to be made. It's kind of a house money situation where you have a couple ones next year. You got your picks to be able to play with this year. And then if this ends up being a super flex, I'm sorry, but the rest of your league mates are going to be regretting that for a while because you have Jalen Hurts, Trevor Lawrence, Jared Goff, and Will Levis. And then at that point, if it does become a super flex, you can say, hey, guy like Will Levis, guy like Jared Goff, you guys need a quarterback. You guys need to invest in a quarterback too. I'm here. Let's talk.
Yeah, I mean, it is still an 8-man league, so you'd have to assume most people
Fair.
have like 2 or 3 starting caliber
That's fair.
quarterbacks. One thing I might consider doing is taking a guy like Will Levis, who I believe is a pretty volatile projection, maybe
Adding some.
pair him with Jared Goff, tell the guys like, hey, we're going to, move to a super flex soon. You're going to need quarterback depth, and go after a better option. Will Levis, Jared Goff are fine depth pieces, but if you can get Anthony Richardson for that or something like
Oh,
that,
obviously. Yeah.
Kyler Murray, somebody in that territory of quarterbacks,
Dak, yeah.
then I would, Dak, somebody like that would make some sense as a quarterback 3 for your team. It would make your team more valuable, so on and so forth. And also, too, I mean, anytime you can consolidate in a league like this, even if you think you're losing the trade at face value, an
It's an
8-man
8-team
league,
league.
a start 8 league, dude, DJ Moore plus Hollywood Brown, if you think that's an overpay for, Chris Olave, it's not. Trust me,
Yeah.
it's not. You want better assets on your team than depth on your team because your team, everybody's going to have deep teams. The waiver wire probably has half decent options on it, to be honest.
Yeah, I agree. Let's rapid fire some of these deals. It seems like your team's pretty much set up. Just play the offseason by ear. These trades, Algier for a second smash deal. Algier is meaningless in an 8-man league. Let's
And
be
a
real.
second round pick is also a top 16 pick in an 8-man league.
Saquon Barkley and a 2 for Garrett Wilson. Yeah, like someone like this you mentioned was dumping or a second trade. I believe my running backs to be strong enough. It doesn't even matter what you believe. If this is the value for Garrett Wilson, I'm paying it for Garrett Wilson. Plain and simple. And the next one, you're able to get a second and a fourth for Pat Freiermuth. You could say, oh, second and fourth, Pat Freiermuth at this point. Like maybe you wanted to hold the young tight end. But at the same time, that 2025 second is basically guaranteed to be a top 16 pick at worst, potentially being a top 12 pick. So if you could tell me right now, I got a late first, early second for Pat Freiermuth, I'd be sending him out the door.
Yeah, absolutely. And one thing I wanted to plug real quick, because we haven't talked about it throughout this entire video, is we do have a Dynasty trade calculator that you guys can adjust to your league settings. Pretty soon, you'll actually be able to input your entire teams. Like you put your sleeper ID in there and it'll bring in all your teams. And you can analyze our opinions on these trades based on your league settings. So in an 8-man league like this, this is a very different league format than a traditional 12-man league where Garrett Wilson for, Saquon Barkley in a second might be a little closer in a 14-man league, but it's still probably Garrett Wilson. But in this league, it's a blowout. Like it's Garrett Wilson, not even close in an 8-man league.
Yeah, absolutely agree. It's like the difference when you play in redraft, for example, and you're in a league that has 4 bench spots versus a league that has 8 bench spots. In a league that has 8 bench spots where everybody has depth, at that point, it's like, ooh, like, do I want to pay that much for a certain asset? When you have less players to occupy your team and less players in the league to occupy spots, guess what? The top end talent's going to inherently increase in value, and the mid end talent is inherently going to decrease in value because of that, because a lot of people are going to have depth.
Yeah, absolutely. So again, looking at your team, Nick, you're probably in a good spot to just try and consolidate assets, get yourself a little bit younger if possible. Maybe you want to move down from ETN because he's like a little older relative to running backs, and you can go down to like a rookie running back or a second-year running back from this particular draft class or whatever. But for the most part, consolidation of assets is what you should be focused on in an 8-man league. Maybe investing in some quarterbacks with the anticipation of maybe a super flex change coming here soon. So again, if you guys did enjoy this video, leave a like down below, subscribe to the channel if you are new around here. As I talked about already, if you want to skip the line for these videos, flockfantasy.com, promo code FSE is how you do that. You get 30% off with the promo code FSE, 6 months for free when you sign up annually, and a free Zoom consultation when you sign up annually. So if you're in 5 Dynasty leagues and you need help in all 5 and you don't feel like submitting 5 teams, sign up annually on Flock Fantasy. We can go through all 5 of the teams with you on a Zoom call, personalized advice that you're not getting anywhere else with a sign up annually on Flock Fantasy. And also, like I said, you can use our Dynasty trade calculator, all of the articles that we have coming out, Dynasty draft guide coming out with all the prospect profiles and everything you guys will need to know to dominate your Dynasty leagues this coming spring. So if that interests you, the link will be down below for that in the pinned comment. But with that being said, peace out and we'll talk to you soon.